couple minutes after 1, so let's get started. Welcome, friends. We will take questions at the end of our presentation today. You can submit them in your chat, and we will be able to look those over while our event is during the event. We're going to share a snapshot of Guatemala, just a little brief overview. And of course, Laura and Steve are with us today. They're very happy to be with you and sharing the humanitarian mission of Square Foot Gardening Foundation. Our special guest is Greg Jensen, who's with us from Guatemala live. He's going to share the impact of Square Foot gardening in his community and the kind of difference he is making with families who have experienced food insecurity and the great results that he's had. So just a couple highlights so everyone learns a little bit more about Guatemala, which means the land of trees in Mayan. And extra bonus points for anyone who is a Star Wars fan. This is the exact scene from the first Star Wars, which Greg shared with us, from the Rebel base. So interesting fact we did not know. Lots of volcanoes in Guatemala, 37 to be exact. This country also has the largest population in Central America. 18 million. A sad and sobering fact, however, is that Guatemala ranks number 6 in the world for chronic malnutrition. Let's hear from Laura and Steve about Square Foot Gardening and how our gardening method inspired a humanitarian effort in Guatemala. I see Laura is off mute and she is ready. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Kelly, and welcome everybody to this great webinar where we'll be talking a little bit about our relationship with Cultiva. I'll just give you a little background on how we started. It was back in 2016 when I was kind of Googling around and Facebooking around and looking at all these beautiful pictures of Square Foot Gardening while Mel was ill and trying to get my finger on the pulse of what Mel had started way back in the day. And I stumbled across some beautiful Square Foot Gardening pictures from a man named Greg Jensen. So through a mutual friend and Facebook, we connected. And I really saw how Greg was taking Mel's mission of ending world hunger 1 square foot at a time to the nth, in that he was helping to end world hunger by helping those to help themselves. And that is really what the mission of Square Foot Gardening is. It's not a hand out, but it's a hand up in the sense we want to teach people how to end the cycle of poverty. And Greg was actually walking the walk, as they like to say. So I reached out to Greg, and he had told me back in those days that he had about 300 square foot boxes, Square Foot Gardening boxes in these villages, in these tiny remote villages in Guatemala. Today, Greg has over 2,000 Square Foot Gardening boxes with the help of his team, which has grown. Not only has Square Foot Gardening grown, but Greg's Cultiva Foundation has also grown. And we've also grown in a parallel, in the same way at the same time in many respects. So one of the things that Steve and I decided to do was to help Greg in his mission to help the people of Guatemala, in that we granted Greg some monies to keep this going. So long story short, he's enabled families to lift themselves out of poverty, over 2,000. You'll hear from Greg how he's done that, how he continues to do that, how our partnership has grown, how we look forward to the future to fight chronic malnutrition around the globe. And we hope that Greg's model in Guatemala can be utilized in many places around the globe. So that being said, we will turn it over to Steve to introduce Greg and keep it moving.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today, and we're glad you joined. You know, we're celebrating our 40th year at Square Foot Gardening. 1981 was the year the first original book came out from Rodale. 3 years after that, 1984, my dad started the Square Foot Gardening Foundation. And when he envisioned in that would be people that would go out into the world and their community at home as well, like our certified instructors, and teach people this method and become more self-sustainable. And I think he would be very proud today to see the results that we've been getting with Square Foot Gardening around the world. And Greg Jensen is one of those people who epitomizes exactly what my dad had in mind. Greg has gone to the mountains of Guatemala and the villages where the nutrition aspect was so poor. And he's teaching not just Square Foot Gardening, but he's teaching the nutritional aspects of foods that differ from what they're used to. And it's come a long way since 1984. You can see from the slide that's up there, that's my dad in the upper left. He's in India, and up in the mountains of India, there are whole villages doing Square Foot Gardening, massive amounts of compost manufacturing up there. Everyone, you can't get the ingredients for Mel's Mix in many parts of the world, but we're finding in India, they were growing in 100% compost. And on the right-hand side, that's a current photograph in South Africa. We have a lot of Square Foot Gardens being built, and they're being taught in the schools. So self-sustainability, nutrition, once again, is key there. And of course, that middle photograph, one of my favorites. These are the Mayan women, and they're harvesting. And you can see from the lushness of those gardens, they're eating vegetables that they've never even had before, never had a chance before. They're learning so many new things about nutrition. And that's all thanks to people like Greg Jensen and his work and what he's done with Cultiva. I could go on about Greg, I can go on about Cultiva, but I just want to make it known that Cultiva represents exactly what my dad had in mind when he started this foundation. And we're very, very proud to have Greg as part of it, and we're very proud to have him today. And without further ado, Greg, why don't you take it over?
All right, thanks so much, you guys. I'm so happy to be on this webinar, on this call. And thanks for the invitation. Yeah, it's been several years now, our collaboration, our partnership with Square Foot Gardening and Square Foot Gardening Foundation. And so super excited to cover these things and share with you. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to take about 20 minutes, and I'm going to teach you some new things. Hopefully you'll learn some stuff, you'll be inspired. And I hope that there's a couple things that are take-home points to you, that something that you can then apply in your life. That's really what I do. As I said, my name is Greg Jensen, and my purpose in life is teaching and mentoring and helping people overcome their own internal and external poverty. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that here in a few minutes. One of the ways that I do that is through Cultiva. The name Cultiva comes from the word cultivate. And in Spanish, the verb is cultivar. It also means to cultivate. So it's kind of this cool word that works both ways. And that's where the name Cultiva comes from. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to cultivate vegetables, and we're also trying to cultivate lives. And I love doing it here with Cultiva for people in Guatemala. And I love doing it for anyone around the world. And this is going to make a lot more sense as I go through this. I'm going to be telling 3 stories kind of intertwined here. One is my story. I want to share more about my personal history with poverty and what that means. Number 2, I'm going to tell you about a very important person, and his name is Juan. I'm going to tell you his story. And thirdly, I'm going to tell you the Cultiva story. So hopefully everybody's nodding their head right now, and you're ready for that. So this is me back in 2011. My family and I moved to Guatemala. We were living in the United States. I wish I had really noble reasons for why I wanted to move to Guatemala, but I just wanted something, different. Me personally at the time, I had a really good job, but I felt very unfulfilled. I felt kind of a little bit without purpose. Maybe you felt that before. Relationships weren't that great. I don't know that I was being the best parent. I wasn't in very good physical health before I came down. And maybe you felt this before. I felt kind of stuck in life. I felt stagnant, maybe a little disconnected. And I didn't really feel like I had a lot of direction. On the outside, everything looked fine and no one would have known. But on the inside, I really felt like I didn't have that purpose in my life. And those are the feelings that I felt in that time. And so we ended up in Guatemala. I convinced my wife, and we had lived here before, and we sold all our stuff, put our kids in our minivan, and we drove to Guatemala in July and August of 2011, just coming up on 10 years now. And for me, there was no risk. The worst thing that could happen was we hated it, and we turn back around and drive back up and buy another house and get another job. But I really want this to set the stage, and for you to remember, we're going to come back as those feelings of how I felt. And think in your mind if there's a time in your life, or maybe it's now, or maybe you know someone who've had these kind of feelings in their life. Next slide, please. This is Juan. And I want you to imagine for a second that you wake up in the morning and you've got a spouse, you've got children to feed, and you wake up in the morning, first thing that comes in your mind is, how am I going to put dinner on the table tonight? That is something I cannot relate to. That was Juan's life before I met him 10 years ago. He would get up in the morning, he would go out in the field, and he spent a bunch of time thinking, how am I going to help my family? How am I going to provide? That's what he thought about every day. Now, backing up just a little bit, I want to back up a long time ago till when Juan was 7 years old. Juan had a bunch of siblings. He had parents. His parents were alcoholics. They were physically, verbally abusive. And when he was 7 years old, he had had enough. He had had enough of being mistreated. He had had enough of being hungry, and he ran away from home at 7. And I've got kids, and I cannot imagine anyone running away at that age. But that's what he did. And he went and got a job. Somebody took him in and gave him a job. He was shoveling dirt or gravel or something like that. And the way he tells it is, I was doing a man's job, the memory thinking back of when he was 7. After 2 weeks, he'd earned some money and he decided to go back home, and he was going to give the money to his family so that they could buy food for the family and for his siblings. And his mother took the money and then proceeded to beat him for running away. And then he left again. And those were Juan's growing up years. From age 7 on, he never spent a day in school. He did all these different odd jobs, and he would kind of check in with his family, but he kind of just raised himself, and he had a very, very rough childhood. He is one of my best friends, and he has told me stories that he's told me he's never told anybody, because he goes to a dark place sometimes to share these stories. When we met, we kind of identified Juan as somebody that really wanted to work hard. So I'm meeting him now in his 40s. He's married, he's got 3 kids. We got to know him and realized he didn't want anyone to give him anything, but he needed some ideas. He needed some inspiration. And so we started doing different projects with Juan. And we ended up doing a fuel efficient stove. We did a composting toilet. We did a rudimentary solar hot water system. And then one day we kind of wanted to take it to the next level. And we asked him, Juan, what's something that you've always wanted to do? What's some dream that you've always had? And he said, nothing, don't have a dream. We said, no, really, what's something that it's some vision, some goal? Nothing. And I was getting frustrated. I think he was getting frustrated because in my mind, in our society, we ask people, what's your big goal? And he didn't have one. And he finally leveled with me and he said, hey, Greg, you want me to tell you why I don't have some big dream? I said, yeah. He says, I don't have a big dream because I don't allow myself to dream, because I know that there is no chance that it will ever come true. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not expecting that answer. Now, what I want you to get out of this is Juan was describing how he felt on the inside. Juan was describing his feelings of shame, of worthlessness, of despair, of sadness, of hopelessness. And I'm going to explain now, here in a minute, why that's so important. So after after talking to him a little bit more, I pled with him and said, hey, if you just trust me for a second, if there's something you ever wanted to do, just what is it? And this is where he kind of leaned in and said, I've always wanted to grow food and raise animals and be able to provide for my family. And I said, I know how to do that. Would you like to learn? Would you like to work together on this project? So we began doing all these different projects on his little tiny property, and we put in 9 or 10 4-foot by 8-foot square foot garden boxes. And we had chickens and turkeys and worm composting, and we attempted a tilapia pond, and we did all these different things, just experimenting and trying out, because at the same time, we were trying to figure out, how are you supposed to help people without just giving it away and without harming people? How are we supposed to do this the right way, the effective way? And so that was the focus that we had. Next slide. So once we kind of tried everything out, we wanted to take it to the next level, and we started Cultiva. And I told you what Cultiva means, and we wanted a way to now do what we did for Juan, but on a bigger scale. And so we created a place. You can see that square foot garden box. Hopefully that box would do Mel proud. I think it looks pretty good. We started using, we had a site where people could come and learn how to do this in their home. And so we had this concept of learning and earning. And we created what we call the Cultiva way, where people learn about it, then they have to earn what they get, and then we do lots of follow-up to make sure that they're successful. Where a lot of people are doing handouts and just giving things away, we want to build people up so that they can really do things for themselves. So we have this seed to plate concept. And to touch upon square foot gardening really quickly here, you can go to the next slide. In a humanitarian application in the developing world, square foot gardening is ideal. And many years ago, not long before Mel Bartholomew passed, we talked about this. What's the way to do this in a humanitarian way? What do you do if you don't have peat moss or vermiculite? And we talked about just planting and compost, and that's what we did here. And so here in Guatemala, a lot of times there's not a lot of space. So super important, we can do a lot in a small space. Water is a big one. We have a lot of communities that have very little water. And so this is perfect, where we don't need a lot of water for square foot gardening. Sometimes there's dead soil, or it's been poisoned, or with so much stuff that's in the ground, or sometimes we put them right on concrete pads in playgrounds in schools, and it works out perfectly. And of course, it reduces a lot of the work, and we can really kind of guarantee almost, if they will do what they're taught, that they are going to have success. Next slide. Now, I mentioned external poverty and internal poverty. If there's a part where you stop scrolling on your phone and you really pay attention, this is the part. This is the secret sauce of Cultiva. This is the thing that I spend all my time teaching and talking about. There was a study done several years ago by the World Bank. They wanted to understand why we are not, as a world, having success in ending poverty. And so they did a study to understand poverty better. There were 2 parts of the study. The first part of the study is they interviewed people just like you and me in the developed world, asking us, what does poverty look like to you? And invariably, we give answers like, poverty to me looks like a lack of food, water, shelter, medicine, money. Those are all right answers, but those are symptoms of poverty. Those are not actually what poverty really is. Now, what do those things have in common? Those are all physical, tangible, external things. So to make this clear, I call that external poverty. It's the lack of material stuff. And so that's our definition. Now, the second part of the study is they went and interviewed over 6,000 people in over 60 countries, and they asked them the same question. What does poverty look like to you? And guess what? Those people didn't give the same answers. How did they describe it? They described it as feelings of not being able to provide for their family, feeling embarrassed, feeling ashamed, feeling sad, depressed, feeling hopeless. Now, hopefully you're grabbing the connections here. Those are internal things, emotional things, mental things, maybe spiritual things, right? To be clear, I call that internal poverty. Now, why is this important? Because anybody, no matter what their situation, can suffer from internal poverty. I have, and that's what I was suffering from before I came down to Guatemala. Juan did. Those feelings of I can't even dream, I feel hopeless. He was describing internal poverty. I just didn't know that phrase. I hadn't thought of that phrase before. So maybe you have in your life or right now, or there's somebody in your circle right now who may be suffering from internal poverty. And that's why this is so important. Now, what's the big deal? I went all deep there for a second. If we don't really understand what poverty is, how are we going to help eradicate poverty? We need to understand that true poverty is this internal poverty. Now, that doesn't mean we don't help with the external, but we've got to focus on the internal, and through that, and also doing external poverty projects like square foot gardening projects with people. Both of those things are now going to be empowering people, lifting people up, and letting them do things on their own. And I love that square foot gardening is a part of that, because, that's why I love the name Cultiva. That's why we're cultivating those vegetables. We're cultivating people, but our focus is mentoring and coaching people so that they can get out of that hopeless feeling. And what's so exciting is I meet these ladies and I see them come before they start learning with us. And you can sense that. I wish there was some way to measure their level of hopelessness, their internal poverty, but it is tangible. You can see it, you can feel it as they go through classes and start learning and start advancing and start earning it, and they start doing the work, and they start getting excited, and they get inspired, and they get motivated, and how can I get more things growing? And they ask questions, and you can see as they're lifting themselves out of external poverty, their internal poverty is going down. And that's amazing, and that's exciting. And I love that Square Foot Gardening Foundation gets that, and they've grasped that. And I think it's something that can affect anyone, no matter what position that they're in. Next slide, please, Kelly. So kind of finishing my story, those feelings I felt before I came to Guatemala. And I went through this at other times in Guatemala. It wasn't easy to start a nonprofit. And there were a couple times where we thought everything was going to end. And there was a time our family was going through some external poverty as well. And we had driven back to the States to visit family. And on our way back to Guatemala, in Texas, somebody stole all our belongings. We had nothing. My kids didn't even have shoes. That's another story for another day, but man, I get the internal stuff. Those feelings of being stuck and stagnant and feeling unfulfilled, I was starting to find purpose. I was starting to find passion. And what made the difference? My actions were changing me. My choices were changing me. And I started finding more purpose in my life. More passion and more productivity was what was helping me get out of my own internal poverty. And we can go in and out of that. But I was starting to find connection with people, and I was finding direction in my life, and that's what was helping me. Next slide. So back to Juan's story. After he had all this food growing on his property, he had animals and he had all these vegetables. I went up there to visit him, and number one, I asked him, I said, hey, are you going to eat any of this food? I had assumed if he had all this food, he would know what to do. And he was kind of waiting for me to say what to do. And we got down there and I started eating spinach and chard right out of his garden. He called me a rabbit, I remember, because he thought that was crazy. But I asked him a question, I remember then. I said, what's different in your life now that you're able to provide a little better, that you have food to put on the table for your family? And I was expecting a very external poverty answer. I thought he was going to say, oh, I feel better. I have, I sleep better. I feel healthier. I thought it was going to be this kind of physical response. And he said, what's changed for me now that I have all these gardens and I'm doing this for my family? He says, I get along better with my kids. I get along better with my wife. We don't fight as much. I just feel better. I feel more confident. Now that response makes perfect sense now that you understand external poverty and internal poverty. He also, as he was providing for his family, he was lifting himself out of poverty, and his external was getting better, and so was his internal. And those feelings of hopelessness were going down, and he was feeling more empowered and doing more. And so to finish the story about Juan, when we started Cultiva and we were at a point to hire our first person, who better than to make Juan our first employee? And that's Juan in this picture, teaching one of the very first classes to these women about square foot gardening. And the student now became the teacher. He probably knows more about square foot gardening now than I do. He is very much our partner. He is our director. He leads the charge now in the field. He has a team of people under him, and he is now empowered and taking his experiences and teaching his own people in their own language. We work in 2 different areas. It's 2 different Mayan languages, plus he speaks another Mayan language and he speaks Spanish. We have empowered him and taught him and given him the tools and resources to do this. People are programs, and that's my job, is to give him the resources so that we can expand and reach more people. So next slide. So just to kind of step back for one quick second, and then we kind of have a little surprise here as I finish up here. The principles for me here of this internal poverty idea, I don't want this to be lost, because this is the Square Foot Gardening Foundation. This is Cultiva International, helping people grow food. But I think we have to understand these principles that apply to all of us, of how to lift ourselves out of our internal poverty whenever that comes into our life, or whatever area of our life that happens, or being able to help other people as we can help identify those feelings. And the things that are going to help us and the things that help Cultiva is connection. As it's easy for us to go inside and we've all done it and ignore people and get away, and we don't want that connection, but that's what's going to help. And that's what Cultiva focuses on. Support, giving people support, following up with people, empowerment. That's a big word, and we take it really seriously. Helping people find purpose and finding our own purpose, having passion, having productivity in our life, having something we're working on. And really focusing on what our thoughts are, knowing that our thoughts are going to affect our emotions, which are going to affect our actions and what we do, which is the way we're going to have different results. It's the way we're going to have a change in our life. So our thoughts go to feelings, go to actions, and go to results. And hopefully that doesn't sound too weird or something, but really if we think about that and then apply that in that physical project as we're maybe attacking external poverty, it all works together. And it works amazing. And that's what we try to do with Cultiva. And we're grateful to do it with Square Foot Gardening and with the foundation. Next slide, Kelly. So I'm telling you about Juan. Here's a close-up picture of him. And I'm going to go ahead and Juan's come in while I've been speaking here. And we've never done this before. I speak a lot about this and I use his story. But I'm super excited. He has no idea what's going on while he's here. I dragged him. He's an hour away out in the field working. This is Juan. Sonrisa, por favor.
Hi, Juan.
So I think I'll give it back to you, Kelly, at this point. Is that right?
No, go ahead and Greg, just go ahead and speak. He'll be large on the screen. Go ahead. We're watching.
Or maybe Steve, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah, Steve.
Okay, Juan Cosigua, welcome. Good to see you. Good to meet you finally.
Bienvenido, mucho gusto.
Juan, you have shown to be an excellent teacher in your community. You have inspired others, and you have always looked for a better way for your life and for the life of your family and for the life of your community. You represent the Square Foot Gardening Foundation very well. And we would like you to know that the foundation today is honoring you with a certificate, and you are now going to become an honorary certified instructor of the Square Foot Gardening Foundation.
Day one.
And we want to welcome you to the family of certified instructors.
Great job.
And we have some things here for you, as Greg can show.
Congratulations.
All right, I'll just jump in.
Yeah,
Square
great.
Foot Gardening
Thanks, Greg.
Foundation sent him a whole bunch of Square Foot Gardening trowels here. Of course, the certificate, which we got framed, is ¿quiere cambiar la gorra? His square foot gardening, he's always wearing a hat. Now we'll be
Yay,
his
come on.
Congratulations.
we've got some square foot gardening pins here, pencils, planting rulers, and then of course he's got his official letter from Square Foot Gardening Foundation in English and Spanish, and we'll give all that to him. Go ahead, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Juan, welcome to the family. We look forward to hopefully someday meeting you. Continue doing the wonderful work that you are for your community and your family. And congratulations.
Congratulations, Juan.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you.
Great job.
Sí, eso es lo
He's
que
going to just share something real quick, and I'll translate if that's okay.
Okay.
eso lo agradecemos. No me esperabas.
I wasn't expecting this. Just want to say thank you. If you can see, he's quite emotional, which is not, he doesn't do that a lot.
Estoy emocionado. Nunca en mi vida me han dado algo así.
Very emotional. Never in my life have I received anything like this before.
Sé que lo voy a valorar mucho.
I'm going to value this and honor this very much.
Lo voy a tener un lugar muy
I'm going to
especial.
put this in a very special place.
Aw.
Good to hear.
Gracias a
Thank you
él.
very much to all of you.
Continue all your good work.
Gracias por todo su trabajo.
And helping so many families in Guatemala. Thank you.
You're an inspiration.
No está inspirado.
Thank you, Juan.
That's wonderful. Aw.
Muchas gracias. Todo es para
Thank you
él.
very much for everything. Really appreciate it.
Hasta
Fantastic. Thank you, Greg. What a special moment. And I know you have a couple more words to share with our audience.
I do. Yeah. What's the, that was super cool, you guys. Hopefully, I'm trying to keep it together and not cry with him because I knew I had to speak again because I'm one of those that you cry and you can't talk. So this was super cool. Thank everybody for being a part of this. Everyone that's on. Remember, he's never been to a day of school. He's never received a certificate in his whole life. It didn't even occur to me till right now that how this just hit him. I didn't know it was going to turn out like this, but I want to let you know, if you're wondering, how can I get involved and how can I help people with internal, external poverty? How can I help Square Foot Gardening Foundation and Cultiva reach more people and empower more people? We have 3 ways you can help. And we're going to have all the links here on the screen and everything. But number 1, people are programs, and you can make a gift to Cultiva International. Our website and social media links are all here. It's a tax deductible event for you. We're a 501c3 in the United States. This money goes directly to fund the program of having Juan and his team have very, very good jobs to keep them in the field, teaching people, training people, mentoring people, and it also covers materials to help people earn their own garden box. That's where the money goes. That's what we do. We don't have a bunch of big overhead or offices in the States or anything like that. We have 9 Guatemalan employees. They all take care of their families. We have weathered COVID, and we are trying to have a bigger influence here. The second way you can get involved and you can help is visit us. We have people come for week-long trips with us, and you can go out in the field with him and plant, help people install the garden box that they have earned, help them plant for the first time, show them how to water. They go through all the training with Juan, but we like people to come down and have this experience. It's this connection. It's powerful, and it helps us all with our internal poverty. And the third way is check out our social media and follow us and share and tell people what you learned. And tonight, if you're sitting at the dinner table, tell people about what you learned about internal poverty and external poverty. Tell them what hopefully was impactful to you, and talk about what Cultiva's done. Cultiva is growing quickly, and we have some really big things in the works to try to get this philosophy and this idea to help shift the way we do development work in the world. This is super important, and nutrition is at the forefront of fighting poverty in the world. And so is this idea of doing it on the inside. And we are starting to move from the bottom up, and we're making contacts and kind of making it some waves in the world of development of how to do it right. So if you can do any or all of these things, please do it. I think on the next screen, there's a way to reach out to us with any questions, website, social media. Please get involved. Sometimes you don't know where to put your money, you don't know where to put your time because you're worried if it's a good investment, meaning is it going to be used efficiently? Is it going to be the right thing? And hopefully you've gotten that feeling from us today, and you know us and you know where your money is going. So thank you.
Greg, the last slide we'll share does have all of those links and website information. We've also been putting them in the chat. We've had a couple questions come into the chat from attendees. One question is just a better understanding of gardening that families do in Guatemala, thinking that that part of the world has really great, beautiful soil and growing conditions. And so is home gardening and home vegetable growing not something that is handed down and already prevalent with families and communities?
Great question. I meant to cover that. I missed it in my notes somewhere. Thank you. Yes, Guatemala is a year-round growing season. We can get at least 3 harvests. There's great soil, there's great weather. We get rain half the year. You would think, what's the problem? Why isn't Guatemala already growing food? Why aren't people growing food for themselves? How is it the 6th highest chronically malnourished country in the world? It's a great question. If we go in history, Mayans were known for all the growing that they did. It has been lost. Guatemala has gone through a lot of tough times, lots of political problems. There was a 30-year civil war that just ended in 1996. Lots of political corruption, lots of poverty. Once these things kind of get lost, they don't get passed on. Guatemalans subsist on corn, and corn alone fills their bellies, but it doesn't give them the nutrition that's needed. It's created all sorts of physical stunting, mental stunting. Guatemalan women are on average the shortest in the entire world. That mental stunting lowers IQ, brains are slightly smaller. This is all in studies, and we're trying to get back to that. So even though you look around and it's not hard for us to grow things, but it's just been lost over generations. And any agriculture you do see here is all commercial and it's being shipped out. There is just not a tradition of growing food in home. Sometimes I meet people, elderly people, and they did. But now with Coke and Pepsi and junk food on every corner, nutrition has changed and they just don't have that knowledge about it. And so we're trying to bring that back.
That is fascinating. Thank you. Another attendee asked, in your square foot gardens, are you growing local and indigenous vegetables, as well as some of the vegetables we might be familiar with in our own gardens up north?
Great question. We do both. Based on a lot of work and with other organizations and experience, we are not trying to introduce a bunch of things that are new. It's been found there might be some different things that are more nutrition than what we're putting in these gardens and what people are doing, but if we found if somebody's not familiar with it, they're not going to consume it. And so they are familiar with the vegetables that we have. So you can see in the pictures, if you're a gardener, you can see we do lettuce and chard and spinach. We're getting the leafy greens. We're high up, so it's cooler. So we do really well with the root crops and leaf crops. The flowering stuff's a little trickier, but what you would call maybe spring vegetables in North America, we do a lot of that. And besides those things, we do have a couple of things. One is called quillete or yerba mora. It's just a plant. And then when we started, I thought, what is this? Are we going to be doing this? And I researched it, and it's from the nightshade family. It's very similar to spinach in protein and nutritional value. And it's something they take the leaves and they put it in their broth and they cook it up. And so we include that as well. So it's everything in there, things that they're familiar with. Maybe they haven't used them before, but yeah, there is a mix of vegetables that we would all know, and then like the one I gave you that example of that is traditional to them and they love, and it's just it's always growing.
Fantastic. Another question came in. Tell us about watering of the gardens. Is there accessible, easy water for the gardens? Tell us more about either transporting water or what Mother Nature provides.
Yeah, this is a wide range. Right now, we're working in about 62 different villages over a pretty big area. We do have some villages that do have water piped to their home. They might have one spigot and they put it in a bucket, they bring it down, and everything's hand watered. And then we have other areas that get water every few days. We have some communities that won't let them use the water for even gardening. And so we're trying to work with other methods of helping them recycle some of their gray water, get some of the food and soaps and scum out of it so that it's clean enough at least to water vegetables. When it's rainy, they try to capture as much water as they can. Some people are carrying the water from quite a distance, by hand in buckets for their home and for their garden. That's why this method is so key, because they don't have to put up a rainbird sprinkler and dump gallons of water over their garden and water weeds. We've taught them, water this little plant, that's it. And so the water goes a long way. So we just had a meeting the other day. We are moving into more water projects and more water solutions, because we have people that want to grow more food, but they can't water it half the year. And so we're trying to be a solution to that and do it, family by family.
Can you tell us more about the leadership program that Cultiva International runs?
Yeah, we have a super cool program. We've got a week coming up this next week. And for the past several years, we've been inviting down groups. We've done a lot of youth groups, but we're starting to expand we've got a real estate office that wants to come down. We have some corporate things that want to come down. We're finding that we all need to work on internal poverty. And one of the coolest ways we can do that is to be in Guatemala, work with Guatemalans, have these experiences in the field, and go through workshops and training about what effective philanthropy and humanitarian work looks like. Learn more about this whole internal and external poverty idea. And so we have week-long programs where you get to do some really cool stuff and zip line and hike and learn about Guatemala and its culture and all the handicrafts and things that are here. You get to be in the field with us, partner up with Cultiva and be out in the field and rub shoulders with these people and have this human connection. I call it speaking human. You don't need to speak Spanish, but you can speak human. We can smile and have that connection. And then, of course, the workshops and the training that we teach about humanitarian work. And really, we want people to feel inspired and go home with tools and ideas and plans to go home and do more in their life and to be more in their life. And so if you have questions about that, you can also reach out to us. We bring down groups, usually 20 people in a group. But if you have a smaller group that you want to come down, please reach out. We'd love to explain it to you and tell you about what it is. These are impactful programs that are unique. It's not your traditional just go down and do work. There's a lot more to it. Hopefully you can kind of get the vision because of what you've learned today.
Well, speaking of vision, we just had a note from one of our attendees, Sharon. They have started SFG in impoverished communities in Nicaragua, partnering with a nonprofit and organization there. And they'd like to get in touch with you to ask some specific questions. And we just Sharon, we just put Adriana's email in the chat. Carmen has asked, how can I connect the neighbors in my area? Carmen, could you let us know, could you rephrase that a little more? It sounds like a very important question. You want to help the families that have been left behind. We'll wait a minute for Carmen to maybe type us something a little more.
Yeah, you know what, Kelly?
Yes.
Carmen had said earlier, she has many people from from Guatemala who are her neighbors.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Here in the States. So I think she's asking how can she connect in her area and help the people at home, their family at home, they're left behind. That's what she meant.
Well, Carmen, we've got definitely give them information, let them know about the website for Cultiva International, let them know their social media channels to follow. You can contact Adriana for more information. So you're wanting to build a connection between neighbors in the U.S. with communities in Guatemala.
Yeah, great.
Well,
thanks.
thank you. That's very thoughtful. It's very, very thoughtful. We don't have any further questions that have come in. I think we're going to wrap it up here. And Greg, thank you for the important and inspiring work you and your team do in Guatemala using the square foot gardening method. And congratulations again to Juan. Welcome to the Certified Instructor community of SFG garden experts. Thank you for your great questions, everyone. We're very appreciative you were able to join us today, and this event has been recorded, and everyone who registered will get a link. So we're all on gallery view now, and I think we'll wave goodbye to everyone who has joined us. Thank you for your great questions and joining us. Congratulations again, Juan. Thank you, Greg. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
everybody
you
for joining us.